Stand on the rim of the Grand Canyon today, and you're looking at rock laid down 600 million years ago. Walk the streets of Cusco, and you're stepping on foundations built without mortar that have survived earthquakes that toppled everything the Spanish built on top of them. Sail into the harbor at Rio, and the mountains rise out of the ocean like something a god arranged on purpose. 2 continents, 42 million square kilometers, more rainforest, more mountain, more river, more extremity than anywhere else on Earth. Boast. For most of human history, the people who lived here had no idea the rest of the world existed, and the rest of the world had no idea they existed. Then, one October morning in 1492, that changed forever, and almost nothing about what followed was simple. For centuries, we've had to imagine what the earlier Americas actually looked like. Drawings in crumbling codices, accounts written by conquerors with obvious reasons to lie, ruins half swallowed by jungle. But now, using AI trained on historical imagery, we can take those original records and see them as they may have appeared in real life. The Great Pyramids rising above the tree line, the streets of Tenochtitlan crowded with merchants and priests, the Inca road system stretching over the spine of a continent. You're about to witness more than 15,000 years of history in one video. Sit back and relax as we journey through the incredible story of the Americas. Let's go back to where it all began. The year is roughly 13,000 BC. The last ice age is loosening its grip, and somewhere along what is now the coast of Alaska and British Columbia, small groups of people are moving south. They came from Siberia, following game across the land bridge that the low sea levels had exposed. Or perhaps they came by boat, hugging the coast, leaping from ice shelf to ice shelf. Archaeologists still argue about which. What is certain is this: within a few thousand years, humans reached the tip of South America. They crossed deserts, climbed mountain ranges, hacked through jungle. Every environment on Earth they figure out. By 10,000 BC, people are farming in Mexico. By 3,000 BC, complex societies are emerging along the coast of Peru. By 1,500 BC, the Olmec are building massive stone heads in the Gulf Coast lowlands, portraits of rulers so large and heavy that moving them staggers the imagination. No wheels, no iron, no draft animals larger than a llama, and yet the Maya are perhaps the most astonishing story of the ancient Americas. Deep in the jungle of what is now Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize, they build cities, not villages, cities. Tikal, Palenque, Chichen Itza, temples that pierce the jungle canopy, plazas that could hold tens of thousands. A writing system that records history, ritual, and astronomy in intricate carved glyphs. They develop a calendar more accurate than anything in Europe at the time. They calculate the movements of Venus to a fraction of a degree. Their mathematical system independently invents the concept of zero, a conceptual leap that most ancient civilizations never made. At its peak, the Maya world supports perhaps 10 million people. Then something goes wrong. Between 800 and 900 AD, the great southern cities collapse. Populations plummet. The jungle swallows the temples. Why? Drought, probably. Warfare between city-states. Ecological collapse from overcultivation. The honest answer is we don't fully know. The Maya don't disappear, but their golden age ends. When the Spanish arrive 7 centuries later, their descendants are still there, and the memory of what their ancestors built has not faded. Meanwhile, further north, other worlds are rising. In the Valley of Mexico, the city of Teotihuacan grows into one of the largest cities on Earth. By 400 AD, perhaps 125,000 people live there. The Pyramid of the Sun is the 3rd largest pyramid in the world. The Avenue of the Dead runs for miles through a city of extraordinary order and planning. And then Teotihuacan too collapses around 550 AD. Its great temples burned, its population scattered. The valley goes quiet for centuries. In the early 14th century, A wandering tribe called the Mexica arrives in the Valley of Mexico. They are not welcome. Every powerful city-state in the region looks down on them as barbarians. According to their own mythology, their god, Huitzilopochtli, has promised them a sign, an eagle perched on a cactus eating a serpent. They wander until they see it. It appears on a small swampy island in Lake Texcoco. They build there anyway. Within 2 centuries, the city they call Tenochtitlan is one of the largest cities in the world, bigger than London, bigger than Paris. Perhaps 200,000 people on an island connected to the mainland by great causeways, served by aqueducts organized into a grid of canals and streets. The Spanish explorer Bernal Diaz, who walks into it in 1519, writes that he cannot find words adequate to describe what he sees. Some of his companions wonder if they are dreaming. The Aztec Empire by this point controls most of central Mexico. It is held together partly by tribute and partly by fear. Subject peoples are required to supply not just goods, but human beings for sacrifice. The theology demands it. The sun, they believe, will stop moving without blood. At the great temple in Tenochtitlan, thousands are killed in a single dedication ceremony. This will matter. When the Spanish come, they will not have to conquer the empire alone. Half the continent will help them. Down the western spine of South America, another empire is doing something extraordinary. The Inca, at their peak in the early 16th century, ruled the largest empire in the pre-Columbian Americas. From what is now Colombia in the north to Chile and Argentina in the south, nearly 4 million square kilometers. No writing system, no wheels, no iron, and yet they build 40,000 kilometers of road, an engineering feat that rivals Rome. They terrace the Andes so precisely that some of those terraces are still farmed today. They build Machu Picchu, a city perched above the clouds at 2,400 meters. Every stone fitted so perfectly that a sheet of paper cannot be inserted between them. They hold the empire together with a system called Mitta labor obligation and with a network of relay runners who can carry a message from one end of the empire to the other in days. They store food in thousands of warehouses scattered across the mountains, a buffer against famine that serves their millions of subjects. In 1527, the Inca emperor Huayna Capac dies of smallpox, a disease that arrived ahead of any European. His 2 sons go to war over the throne. They are still fighting when the Spanish land, the 12th of October, 1492. A lookout on the Pinta spots a white cliff in the moonlight. Christopher Columbus has found land. He thinks he is near Japan. He is, in fact, standing off the coast of an island in the Bahamas. The people who come out to meet his boats the next morning have never seen a sailing ship. He writes in his journal that they are gentle and would make good servants. Within a generation, those people, the Taino, are gone. Disease, enslavement, starvation, a population that numbered perhaps 1 million in 1492 is functionally extinct by 1550. It is the pattern that will repeat across the hemisphere. In 1519, Hernán Cortés lands in Mexico with 600 men, 16 horses, and enough ambition to be genuinely dangerous. He has no authorization from the Spanish crown for conquest. He burns his own ships to prevent his men from retreating. He marches toward Tenochtitlan. The peoples he passes on the way Totonac, Tlaxcalan, dozens of others crushed under Aztec tribute join him. By the time he reaches the city, he commands thousands of indigenous allies who have their own reasons to want the Aztec Empire gone. The Aztec Emperor Montezuma receives them, whether from diplomacy, theology, or a miscalculation about Spanish intentions. He allows them inside the city. It is a mistake. Within months, Cortés has taken him hostage. The city erupts. On a single night in June 1520, the Noche Triste, the sad night, the Spanish and their allies are driven from the city in a chaotic retreat. Hundreds die. Cortés himself barely escapes. He comes back with more allies and a new weapon, smallpox. By the time he besieges Tenochtitlan in 1521, The city is already dying from within. The epidemic has killed tens of thousands. The water supply has been cut. After 80 days of siege, the last emperor, Cuauhtémoc, is captured, trying to escape by canoe. The city falls. The Spanish tear it down stone by stone and build Mexico City on the rubble. 11 years later, in 1532, Francisco Pizarro does something even more audacious in Peru. He has 168 men and arrives in the middle of an empire torn apart by civil war. He captures the Inca emperor Atahualpa at a meeting in Cajamarca, massacring thousands of unarmed attendants in an ambush that shocks everyone, including his own men. Atahualpa offers a ransom, a room full of gold, twice over in silver. The Spanish take the gold and execute him anyway. The Inca Empire, already fractured, never recovers. By 1600, Spain controls an empire that runs from New Mexico to Patagonia. Portugal controls Brazil. The wealth flowing back across the Atlantic is staggering. Silver from the mines of Potosi and Bolivia, gold from Colombia, sugar from the Caribbean. The human cost is almost incomprehensible. Somewhere between 50 and 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas dies in the century after contact. The exact numbers are debated, but the scale is not. Some historians call it the greatest demographic catastrophe in human history. Disease does most of the killing, but forced labor, starvation, and outright murder contribute. The labor shortage the colonizers create, they fill with enslaved people from Africa. Between 1,500 and 1,900, roughly 12 million Africans are transported across the Atlantic in chains. Perhaps 2 million die on the voyage. They work the sugar plantations of Brazil and the Caribbean, the tobacco fields of Virginia, the rice paddies of South Carolina. The wealth of the Atlantic world is built on their bodies. Meanwhile, in the north, a different kind of colonial project is underway. The English arrived late. The first permanent settlement at Jamestown, Virginia, is not established until 1607. It nearly fails multiple times. Half the settlers die in the first year. They are saved, and this is not mythology, but documented history, partly by the people already living there who teach them to grow corn and share food. Then the English take the land anyway. By the mid-1700s, 13 British colonies stretch down the Atlantic seaboard. They are prosperous, argumentative, and developing a particular political identity, one shaped by Protestant religious thought, Enlightenment philosophy, and a growing resentment of a crown that taxes them without giving them a seat in Parliament. The year is 1776. In Philadelphia, delegates from 13 colonies sign a document declaring themselves free of British rule. The language Thomas Jefferson uses is radical. All men are created equal. They are endowed with unalienable rights. When a government fails to protect those rights, the people may abolish it. The contradiction in that language, signed by men who own slaves, declaring all men equal, will haunt the Republic for centuries. The American Revolution succeeds. By 1783, the British recognize American independence. A new nation is born, governed by a constitution that is, for its time, an extraordinary experiment in democratic self-governance. It sets off a chain reaction. In 1791, enslaved people in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, the most profitable sugar colony in the world, rise in revolt. The Haitian Revolution is the only successful slave revolt in history to result in a new nation. Its leader, Toussaint Louverture, is captured by Napoleon and dies in a French prison, but the revolution survives him. In 1804, Haiti declares independence. France responds by demanding reparations, compensation to the slaveholders that Haiti is still paying off as late as in 1947. In in Spanish America. The revolutions of the 1810s and 1820s sweep across the continent. Simón Bolívar, born in Caracas to a wealthy Creole family, dreams of a unified South American republic. He campaigns across Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, the country named for him. He wins, then watches his dream of continental unity collapse into squabbling independent states before he dies, broken and disillusioned. In 1830, those who have served the revolution rest, he says near the end, have plowed the sea. The 19th century in North America is defined by one word: expansion. The United States, 13 colonies clinging to the Atlantic coast in 1783, reaches the Pacific by 1848. The Louisiana Purchase doubles the country overnight in 1803. Texas is annexed in 1845. California, New Mexico, Arizona seized from Mexico after a war in 1848. The ideology driving it has a name: Manifest Destiny, God's plan. The continent is ours to take. For the peoples already living there, it is catastrophe by another name. The Trail of Tears in 1838 forces the Cherokee Nation from their ancestral lands in the American Southeast at gunpoint. Thousands die on the march west. What happens to the Cherokee happens in different forms to hundreds of nations across the continent. By the 1890s, the indigenous population of the United States has been reduced from millions to perhaps 250,000. The great buffalo herds that sustain the Plains nations are deliberately exterminated. Entire ways of life are destroyed within a single generation. The expansion also tears the United States apart. The question that the founders could not answer, what to do about slavery in a nation premised on freedom, finally explodes in 1861. The Civil War is the bloodiest conflict in American history. 620,000 soldiers dead. More Americans killed than in every other war combined. The Confederacy, 11 southern states fighting to preserve slavery, is defeated in 1865. President Abraham Lincoln does not live to see the peace. He is assassinated 5 days after the surrender in a theater in Washington. The 20th century turns the United States into something the world had never quite seen before. By 1900, it is already the largest industrial economy on Earth. By 1945, it has won a world war, developed the atomic bomb, and emerged as one of two global superpowers. The American century, as it is called, reshapes everything: culture, politics, technology, what people eat and wear and listen to and watch. But the century begins with contradictions still unresolved. The Jim Crow system in the American South is legal apartheid. Black Americans are denied the right to vote, segregated in every public space, subjected to arbitrary violence with no legal recourse. The Ku Klux Klan operates openly. Lynchings are public events. Then, beginning in the 1950s, something shifts. Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. Martin Luther King Jr. leads a movement that is disciplined, strategic, and morally devastating to the status quo. Young people sit at lunch counters and absorb beatings without fighting back. Marchers are attacked with fire hoses on national television. The Civil Rights Act passes in 1964. The Voting Rights Act in 1965. The work is not finished, but something changes that cannot be unchanged. In Latin America, the 20th century is a story of revolution and repression running in cycles. The Mexican Revolution from 1910 to 1920 kills 1 million people and produces a new constitution. Cuba's revolution in 1959 brings Fidel Castro to power and keeps him there for decades. The Cold War turns the Americas into a proxy battlefield, the United States backing military dictatorships in Chile, Argentina, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. Tens of thousands disappear. The dirty wars of the 1970s and 1980s leave wounds that are still raw. The 21st century begins with the Americas trying to reckon with everything that came before. The United States in 2001 is attacked on its own soil for the first time since Pearl Harbor. The September 11th attacks kill 3,000 people and send the country into 2 decades of war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Conflicts that cost trillions, reshape the Middle East, and produce no clean resolution. At home, the tensions between the promise of the founding documents and the reality of American life come to a crisis point again and again. The 2008 financial collapse wipes out a generation of wealth. The election of Barack Obama, the first black president, in 2008 is a moment that carries the full weight of American history behind it. In 2020, the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police ignites protests in all 50 states and across the world. The country is forced again to look at itself. South America in the 21st century is a continent of growing cities, middle classes, and democratic governments, fragile in some places, robust in others. Brazil, the largest country in the hemisphere by area and the 5th largest by population, hosts the World Cup in 2014 and the Olympics in 2016, and then descends into political crisis within years. The Amazon, the largest rainforest on Earth, loses area equivalent to a football field every single minute to deforestation. The consequences of that loss will not respect national borders. The indigenous peoples of the Americas, after 500 years of displacement and destruction, are asserting their survival and their rights with a force that cannot be ignored. In Bolivia, an indigenous man becomes president. In Canada, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission documents a century of forced removal of indigenous children from their families. The reckoning is incomplete, but it is underway. The Americas today are 2 continents of 1 billion people speaking dozens of languages, practicing every religion, drawing from every culture on earth. They are complicated, violent, brilliant, unfinished places. The contradictions built in at the beginning between liberty and slavery, between promise and exclusion, between the world that was here before 1492 and the world that arrived after have never been fully resolved. Maybe that is the story, not resolution, but the ongoing argument, the refusal to let the contradiction stand without pushing back against it. That is what makes the Americas the Americas. Not any single nation or moment, but the restless, unfinished insistence that things can be made better. They are still trying. Thanks for watching. Creating videos like this takes an enormous amount of research and time. It's mainly a passion project trying to compress millennia of astonishing, complicated history into one story without losing what matters. If you enjoyed this journey through the Americas, from the first people crossing the land bridge to everything happening today, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history, and let me know in the comments, which civilization or country from the Americas would you like to see covered in full? There is so much more to tell. History lives in every grain of the hourglass. We'll see you in the next era.